Hey guys, I wanted to give you sort of an end of the season-ish update from the farm and homestead. I have to be honest, it is not a very good or exciting one. I'm Kelsey from RoughAndTumbleFarmhouse.com, where every single week I share stories from our 5-acre homestead here in northern Minnesota. So as you may have noticed this summer, I have gotten out very few videos. It's been sort of a every few weeks sort of a thing instead of my very consistent once every week. And one of the videos, maybe only like 5 videos ago, I posted about how it's just been a really, really rough spring. And it was, you can watch that video if you want to know about just kind of the whole avalanche of things that kept happening in the spring that made me feel very ill-equipped and not ready for summer at all, which normally after a long Minnesota winter, I am just ready for summer. I am excited, I'm energized. This was just not the case this spring. So I really feel like that summer just kind of unfortunately followed that same path and was just, I don't want to say a letdown, but I feel like every homesteader is going to have years where a lot of progress just isn't made, where you just feel kind of stuck and tired and just trying to get by and trying to keep everybody alive. Which I will say, aside from losing quite a few guineas to a mystery predator, and everybody's alive. So that's pretty good, you know. It's kind of we'll take what we can get sort of a year. Now, usually when I film these updates, I film them outside, walking around. I will walk around and film stuff, but it has been a very windy fall, and there's just no way I'm gonna have any decent sort of audio. So I'm just gonna kind of talk through the farm and the updates, and then I'll do some filming out in the blustery days so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So to start, up in kind of the front area of our farm, this used to be sort of a little goat pasture paddock. I had my plans to fence this all off and then graze it. I have not grazed it once. And the old garden fence that was there, I got halfway torn down once while one daughter was napping. The other daughter came with me. And the mosquitoes got too bad, so we had to go in. And then so there's just a big pile of fence. Maybe you can see it, maybe not. That's just coiled up sitting there, and I'd really love to still get that done, because even though we are pretty much at the end of sort of a gardening season, there's still a lot of season left, especially with how we've seen our climate changing. We haven't had a serious frost here yet. So by the time I posted this video, we probably will have had a frost. Looks like we might get one tonight, but there still isn't a hard freeze in the forecast for weeks, and we're already in early October, which is just crazy. So next, I had intended on getting some wine cap mushrooms started right here. They are still sitting in my fridge. Lord knows if they're still viable or not. I don't know how those spores work. I had hoped to do kind of a video about that. What sent me back with those was needing hardwood chips. And so just finding someone who had hardwood chips available that wasn't like a mix of hard and softwood is way trickier than you'd think. And then, so I never even was able to source them, let alone find the time to go and get bags of them to do it. So we do have a spot in our yard where we had downed a tree, and it's, I don't know, a medium type wood. So I'm hoping that this is one I can do when my girls are outside. I can fill a few 5-gallon buckets and haul them down here and sprinkle the spores and hope for the best. Because I mean, at this point, it just, why just throw it away? May as well try something. So moving on down the line here, we have where our bucks were over winter. And I did manage to succeed in getting rid of my goats completely. This is a goat-free farm, which is oddly a little lonely in an interesting way. My life is easier with less things. That has been a realization that's been really hard to sit with as a person who's very go, go, go. Farming has always been kind of my main thing and my passion and what I want to put my energy behind. And of course, having 2 little girls and a baby boy on the way, that has absolutely had to shift. And my mind frame has had to shift from wanting to be a kind of working farm where I am actively putting things out in the community. I more so am just a homestead. I shouldn't say just a homestead. Homestead's a lot of work and nothing to turn your nose up at all. But really just kind of saying, okay, we're not like a farm where I'm maybe even going to be at farmers markets. I'm more of a homestead where I'm doing the best I can to at least provide for me and some close friends and family, that sort of thing. So that's been a big shift. And I know that can change when my kids get older, but that's been kind of a big update for this year's is a big mental, like, okay, I really have to be realistic about what I by myself, for the most part, can achieve. So, sorry, that was a side trail. The goats are gone. That was the point. We were down at the beginning of the season. I think I had 4 actually. I think in my spring video, I had 2 Nubians and I had 2 Nigerian dwarves. The Nubians lady was coming to buy a wether, and my buck was just, I don't know, I always have issues. There's always one goat, right, who's always just like a little skinny, just hard to like put weight on, even if you do fecals and do wormers and things like that. He just was a little bit rough looking. But she was like, hey, if you're interested in selling him too. And I said, well, I wasn't going to sell him because he's not to the standard that I sell an animal at. She's like, no, I understand. Like, that's fine. But, it'd be nice for him to have someone he knows and everything. So I was like, sure, great. So I sold those two together. And then my Nigerian dwarves, they hung on for a while longer because my husband was kind of, oh, maybe I want to keep goats. Maybe I don't want to keep goats. But we need to organize castrating them then, because I'm not keeping stinky bucks around for no reason. It needs to be your deal. And so eventually he also, because he just has a very demanding job, it's like, all right, let's get rid of the goats. So one I sold to a mom working on improving her breeding program, and the other I just gave to some friends of mine who've always been very kind and helpful mentors and lending me bucks and things like that. So he's at a good place, having the time of his life, I'm sure, by now. All right, let's talk bees. So my bees, I didn't think through well enough the fact that we were planning on potentially getting pregnant again, which, like I said earlier, we are. And what you may or may not know is bees are very heavy as the season goes along, as they're making wax, as they're storing pollen, especially as they're making honey and collecting nectar. Those, especially the deeps, the brood boxes, weigh almost 100 pounds. And that is not something you're supposed to be hoofing around when you're pregnant. I did do some reading and research that even as a pregnant person, up to about 50 pounds is fine if it's something you're kind of like used to being around. So, but 100 pounds is definitely not good. And so trying to coordinate someone who is not freaked out by bees, which my husband, he has absolutely no chill and would not be a good beekeeper. No offense, honey, if you ever watch these videos, but he just wouldn't. And then just finding someone that consistently could come and help just didn't happen. So my bees did not get checked as often as they should have been. One colony is doing actually really well, and I have high hopes for them this winter. I need to do a check here pretty soon. And then the other colony, partway through the summer, and it wasn't me, I didn't squish her or anything, but something happened to the queen, which can happen. They can die, they can get sick, they can stop laying for different reasons. And so I noticed when I was doing a hive inspection that there was larvae in there that would have been laid a little bit before I was there and a little bit after I was there, but there was no new larva. And so looking at that, I know that the queen was no longer doing her thing. There were some queen cups they were working on. I consulted with a friend, and he's like, well, if they're at that point, you're just a week or two away from having a laying queen again. But if you want to buy a new queen, it's like anywhere from $60 up for a new queen. So it's just, well, let's let the bees be bees and see what happens. So in my subsequent checks, they were doing well. Like everything looked good in the hive, but just their numbers are not where I think they're going to need to be in order for them to survive the winter. I could be wrong. I'm still a pretty new beekeeper, but that's kind of where that's sitting. So, okay, cut to my raspberry patch that I very proudly was announcing. I think in my spring video, I already had it planted. I think there's maybe six of the like 25 raspberry plants, and that's a generous guess, that are still alive. If any of the strawberries are still alive, it'll be a miracle. It was one of those things where I was like, oh, look, there's a little bit of weed, not like weed, but like weeds in there that I need to deal with. And I'll get to that shortly. Just, a little bit of wheel hoeing will be no problem. I feel like the next day I looked over it and the weeds are looking me in the eyes. So the weeds were just crazy. We had another horrible summer in terms of drought. And so that was just really tough because normally I don't have drip irrigation or anything set up. It's just me watering. So a lot of times I rely on the rain, and I kind of tag team. Well, there was no rain this year. So those bare root plants really struggled. So the raspberry patch looks abysmal. Again, the strawberries, if they're even there, are just like clinging to dear life. So that's another disappointing one. That, again, if I just probably watered and stayed on top of weeds, it would have been a different situation because the plants that are in there are looking okay. Cutting slightly to the side, to the garden. The garden was another rough year. My tomatoes were constantly eaten by something. Even the high ones on the vine had like weird stuff going on with them. I don't know, it was really frustrating. And then my cucumber plants, so I struggled because my dad was coming to bring his tractor to compost into my raised beds because they were really getting low. And sorry, the sun's setting, so the light's kind of shifting here. Anyway, so he was bringing in compost, but he wasn't able to come do that till I think like the last week of May. And I had started my seeds with the expectation of planting some things out by like the first week of May and being done with the garden planted by like mid-May. So a lot of those plants, if you look at the seed packets, it only gives you like a 1 to 2 week span kind of, or even if, start 4 weeks before. So if some of those plants I had started with the intention of, okay, they're going to be just in their things for 4 weeks, and they ended up sitting in there for like 7 weeks. So many of my plants just did not make it because they're not made to survive in trays that long. So I had a lot of plants that didn't make it. So my dream of having enough pickling cukes, all my cucumber plants died except for one pickling cuke plant, which then of course is not enough it creates a lot of cucumbers, but you never have quite enough, and you really got to pickle those cucumbers quickly for them to be crisp. So that never really, we had cucumbers to snack on all summer, which was good. We just started having ripe tomatoes like a couple weeks ago, like mid-September, which is about a month and a half later than I usually have ripe tomatoes. I had these beautiful cabbages that were growing and some awesome kale, and then the cabbage loopers or the cabbage moss, whatever you want to call them, they literally turned my cabbages to lace is what it looked like. It was so sad and disappointing. And they were a big problem a lot of places this year. It wasn't just my garden because I've never had them in my garden before. So that sucked. They completely destroyed the kale. They don't like Swiss chard. Swiss chard was fine. It's still looking good. Oh, but that was such a bummer. I had a pretty okay garlic harvest, so that was nice. But other than that, and then I had chickens get into the garden a couple of times this year, which hadn't been a problem before. So my tomato plants, you can see in there, I had the stakes ready to go. I had done one like layer of kind of trellising them up. And then these chickens got in there, I still don't know how, got in there and ran around on top of all the plants and like squished them down. So I didn't like, if I had lifted the plants at that point to re-trellis them, they 100% would have snapped off and it would have been a complete wash. So I was like, okay, well, I guess we're just rolling with kind of smushed tomato plants. So I had, again, this year, I wanted to have enough tomatoes was my goal I planted to can all my own tomatoes rather than relying on the farm I used to work at. I normally go there and get tomatoes. I was like, no, I want to do my own cukes and my own tomatoes. So that should be simple enough. Well, it was not simple enough because I couldn't do it. So that was nuts. Green beans did great. God bless you, green beans, for always being there for me. I planted flowers, some zinnias, and some marigolds in this one. One zinnia came up, but she's rocking and rolling. Bless her heart. So that one wasn't really great either. My peppers, actually, I've had a great harvest for my peppers, and those plants started out really stunted. Again, they were just in their trays way too long. So garden was also rough. In addition, with the whole rain just not being there and not being there to kind of tag team with me in terms of watering, that really affected things too. So especially things I direct seeded. So the garden, yes, the garden was tough. Cutting to my cut flower garden, haha. Also another like semi-disaster. So another one where the weeds just like totally kicked my butt and I wasn't expecting it. And then I was lucky enough to win from my friends at Dancing the Land Farm. They are in kind of central Minnesota more so, lovely people. They had a dahlia tuber sale, their first one last year, and to celebrate, they did a giveaway and I won some dahlia tubers. I was so stoked. So I got my tubers in the ground, but again, those also got in late because I was waiting on that compost. And once I finally got them in the ground and they are coming up, I'm all excited. The Nigerian dwarves, which are my husband's goats, were my husband's goats, busted out and ate them all down, completely destroyed them. And so those, I think I got maybe 6 or 7 tubers from them. And of those I can't remember, it'll show here in the video, maybe 4 or 5 where the plants are actually up and doing something. I also had gotten from Florette because that's like, the dahlia place, right? I had gotten some seeds because I didn't realize, they're like, oh, it's a cheap way to get into dahlia tubers because dahlia tubers are expensive. Cheap way to get into dahlia tubers. And so I didn't realize though, when you start them from seed, I knew you weren't sure what flower you're going to get, but I didn't realize how small of a percentage of them you keep. So I would not do that next year. I would just buy a couple new tubers every single year. So these plants, which do have some lovely flowers on them, should still produce some tubers for me that I can plant next year. And then I can spend, $50 on a few new tubers and then continue to grow my dahlia collection that way. Because there was, I will say, crazy enough, of all the dahlias I started, I really love this one yellow one it's an open style kind of dahlia, but it has been a really great producer and it's just beautiful. And so if the tubers store halfway decent, this is a nice one that I'm going to keep and continue to use. So yeah, cut flowers. I started so many flowers this year because I want to just have nice, beautiful cut flowers all summer. I have had kind of a little ragamuffin cut flower display pretty much for the last like 3 weeks since the dahlias have finally opened. But again, most of those flowers, they just could not survive the extra time in trays is what happened. So that was, again, really frustrating. So, but we still got something, and something's definitely better than nothing. Okay, let's look at the chicken coop. Nothing has changed with the chicken coop. The chicken coop is gonna look this way probably like 2 years from now when we're hoping to move somewhere with some more acreage. Yeah, chicken coop looks rough. There's no change. Haven't painted it. Haven't gotten the trim around the windows. There are 0 changes with the chicken coop. So there's the coop. In terms of our other animals, we are down a cow, which was not intentional. That was a whole horrible thing where our Jersey was bred sooner than we thought. We had thought that she'd come back into heat, had her re-AI'd. That was the date we were going from. So she calved 2 months earlier than we expected. She was not giving any imminent signs of calving, which can happen with a first-time freshener. She wasn't really bagged up too much or anything, a little bit, but that's, seeing that happen, it's like when you're having babies, your boobs change, earlier than when the baby's gonna come. So that's not unusual to see in a cow either. But so she went to labor when we were gone. The calf was mispositioned. We lost the calf. It was a very traumatic thing because then she wouldn't get up. And we thought if a cow's down for too long on one side, they can basically lose function of a leg. And it was, of course, like at evening chores when I went out and discovered this. So it's like pitch black. We're dealing with it. It was horrible. It was awful. And then, of course, she didn't have a calf to nurse. And I expected I had a couple more months to train her in to be a milk cow, which I did not have at that point. So Juneberry had just freshened the week before. So she's heavily in milk. She is now needing my other cow to be completely milk stall trained and also milk twice a day. And then I've got everything else in my life going on. So I was literally going down to milk like 4 times a day and I have my little girls, so I have to bring them down in the minivan. It was rough. It was very rough. So within a few days of her calving, because I just was not prepared, I was like, I just have to sell her. Juneberry, I will never sell. She will die with me, that cow. Hopefully not anytime soon. Again, good thing I've got wood here. But so within a few days, I determined to sell her. She sold incredibly fast. I listed her in the morning at like 8:30 in the morning, and by 9 p.m. that night, she was going down the driveway in a trailer. So she went to a nice farm, a little less than 2 hours north of here. So I feel okay about that. It does kind of set back my small dairy herd plans a little bit, but that kind of, I'm switching again with that to think, all right, well, I've got my one family milk cow for us, which is fine. And then I did have her AI, but I'm not sure that it took. I have to see here. I'm going to send in a milk sample about another week and a half. I did have her AI with sex semen. So if she has a heifer, then that heifer won't be having a calf until basically about 3 years from now. So at that point, this kid will be much older. My other kids will be in school. It'll just be a better time for me to be growing my dairy herd. So again, it's just kind of that I have to, a friend's sister actually said to me when we were talking about such, like, well, you can absolutely have everything. You just can't have everything at once. So I can't have my little growing dairy herd and my growing family herd at the same time and keep any sort of sanity, basically. So that's sort of the cow update. Juneberry did have a little bull calf who's now quite big. Another kind of area where, I hate to say failure, but we're just like, I feel like a failure. Our pastures are awful this year. I started out doing my rotational grazing, and then again, I just could not keep up this year. And so I did way less rotational grazing than I wanted. Actually, I had some round bales brought in, which is nice in terms of kind of trying to add some of the soils here that are pretty depleted. But the grass is grazed like a golf course out there. It's shameful. This is not the sort of grazing I was taught to do and not the sort of grazing I want to do. Thistles are horrible. They're everywhere. Trying to stay on top of those has been rough. I'm not a person who wants to use chemical on a farm. If it can all be avoided. Again, the drought didn't help me with that because thistles really don't care about drought. They do great while their plants are like, well, help me. Thistles are just doing their thing. So that was another disappointment, another area where I feel like I definitely fell short. So I think those are most of the things to update you on. We do one project my dad and brother are probably going to come help me with here this fall. Is our pole barn has these skylights, and 2 of which have completely rotted out, fallen away. And so I'm trying to keep my hay. I have basically a year's worth of hay in the barn, trying to keep my hay from getting spoiled. So they're hopefully going to come here before it gets too cold. We're going to take the sheet metal off of the big shop door, put that on the roof, and then put some other sheet metal we have that's my dad's scrounge from somewhere, put that on the sliding door. So the tricky thing is the bevel pattern of the metal, the buildings from the 70s, isn't made anymore. So trying to get something that's going to stay not airtight, watertight up there, you need to have something that has kind of the same bevel pattern on the sheet metal. So that's kind of the only project that I would really like to get done this fall before this baby comes. I'm about a little over 2 months until he's going to be here. Barn quilt course has just been sitting there. That is one thing I'm also going to, on a personal thing, get done. Having my mom come hang out for a extra long weekend so I can just pound that out, the last things that need to happen for that, and get that up and running before baby boy joins the family. So yeah, I hope it wasn't too much of a downer video, but just an update. Most years I'm like, yeah, look at all the stuff I got done. I'm doing great. I'm feeling proud. And this is just a year where it just nothing happened. I am just too tired to do stuff, which is so depressing. But again, I feel like everybody has these sort of just off years, and for me this was just one of them. So I'm trying not to be too hard on myself and give myself a little grace. You know, my children are alive and well. This guy's alive and well in there, and the animals that we've kept are alive and well. The calf, it's a bummer, but I mean, I've had family milk cows for a decade now, a little over, and this is the first time we've lost a calf. So it happens to everybody. So yeah, it's just been a summer. It's just been a summer. So if you've had a summer like it, please comment below. We can commiserate. You're welcome to leave encouragement or send condolences or whatever on just kind of a not great farm year. So I will say, canning, I've got pretty much everything put up I wanted to. I'm going to do some peppers hopefully here, just get those in the freezer, and do some pickled jalapenos or possibly a fermented pepper paste. I haven't decided yet. So just hanging on, keep it on, as they say. Anyway, if you're still here, thank you for watching this super long update video. We will see you next week. Hopefully, if I have my act together, we'll see you next week for more farming, family food, and fortitude here at our Rough and Tumble farmhouse.